Hey there, Alex Kidman here, and today I'm taking a look at this. This is the Asus ROG Phone 7 Ultimate, Asus's latest premium price gaming phone. And when I say premium priced, I'm not kidding. This thing runs $2,099 here in Australia, and that's serious premium money. I mean, that's the high end of iPhone, Samsung, you name it. Everyone else's phones are topping out at that kind of price point. So this needs to do something special to really stand out. And it does stand out because there's just not that many gaming-centric phones. So ROG is Republic of Gamers, that's Asus's gaming brand, and the design style, as you can see on here, is very, very gamer-centric. So you've got the primary display here, and then at the back you've got this slightly silly, actually, little 2-inch display. Basic animations, a little bit of charging or notification info, that you like. It's basically there to show off. It's kind of cool though, kind of neat. I should also make note of the fact that for your money, you're getting quite a big box. How big a box? This big a box. I mean, that's a big, big beast of a thing. And it doesn't just have the phone in it either. You do have this slightly silly cardboard wrap thing, which you drop the phone onto when you're setting it up, and it kind of takes you through a few of the things it does. It's cute, it's silly, it's non-essential. I've taken a couple of the other bits and pieces out, but I did want to pull out the 65-watt charger. Now, a lot of premium phones these days do not come with the charger in the box. This does, and what's more, 65 watts power delivery compatible, which means, in theory, you can use this to charge up your notebook as well, if it'll take USB-C power. I'll just shuffle that out of the way, because the other two things of note that you get in the box are a simple case. Now, yeah, it's a simple case, and I suppose it could be flashier for that kind of money, but it's perfectly serviceable, and I do like having a case for my phone. And then there's this, the Aero Cooler 7. So Asus has had these for its past ROG phones as well. It's an air cooler at the back, also a subwoofer, and it adds some buttons for gameplay. I should point out that the ROG Phone 7 also has touch controls at the top, what they call air triggers in-game. You can configure this through the Armoury Crate app, which is named the same as what you get on Asus gaming laptops. You know, consistent branding's no bad thing, and lets you configure various things, including the phone's performance modes. We'll get onto those in just a minute, but I will clip the air cooler in just so you can see how that activates, and it should recognize that it's there and bring up a little thing to say, hey, the air cooler's running. There we go. Aeroactive cooler connected. It'll tell me what the temperature is. The back of it lights up and gets all funky. And while you probably can't tell, I can tell there's a very, very small amount of air getting blown out of that. If I was using the phone in a really heavy fashion, then yes, it does help to cool the phone. This is all well and good. There is one little catch, though, with the way that Asus has laid out the ports on this phone, because at the base you've got another USB as well as 3.5mm headphone jack. I love having a headphone jack on a phone myself, but you'll be able to see there that the USB-C port is actually off to the side there. I don't know why they've done this, because the one thing that it absolutely stymies, if you've got an Android gaming pad, so for example, I've got an OG Raid Kichi here, and as you can see, the USB is centrally mounted, because that's what most phones do. This one doesn't. There is no way that this can work with that, which limits you to those Bluetooth-based controllers, if that's the way you want to go, and they're a little bit more input laggy. They're not exactly high-end gaming. This feels like a misfire on Asus's part. Maybe not a big one, and given you can use air triggers and you can use the buttons on the back of the cooler, maybe not a huge impact to you. So, performance is the name of the game for gaming laptops, and it's the same for the ROG Phone 7 Ultimate. This is running on a Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 processor, 16GB of RAM, and 512GB of internal storage. Quite a nice little recipe for a phone there, and it mostly works very, very well, actually. And that's not exactly surprising. I've said this before so many times. There's not much that really needs this kind of high-end power, but gaming is one of those areas that can. And the advantage here really is more about jumping between different games without necessarily having to wait for lengthy reloads and stuff like that. But the combination of a 165Hz capable screen and 1500 nits of brightness and the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, yeah, leads to really nice gameplay. It all works fairly well with a couple of little catches. So when the air cooler is on, you do have these additional buttons you can use, But there's a problem. And the problem is this: when the air cooler is actually in place and I'm playing a game, I find my fingers do not really natively rest here. I don't really want to hit these buttons if I'm controlling stuff on screen. It's just a slightly offhand feel, and maybe being a little bit wider or having slightly wider, flatter buttons might have helped with that. But I really quickly found I just wasn't using those buttons much at all, and I missed being able to use a regular gamepad. Still, nice, powerful phone, all of that stuff works really well. It's also got a big, thick, chunky battery, 6,000 milliamp hours. These days, plenty of Android phones have 5,000 milliamp hour batteries. Very few go above that. This is one of the few that does. But does that equate to really good battery life? Well, yes and no. In my standard YouTube battery test, which, let's be clear, is not a really high-end test, and this is a high-end phone that you're going to buy because you're going to want to game on it for sure. But in that test, it dropped about 6% of its battery over the course of an hour's playback. Not a bad score, but I've seen better out of premium phones in this kind of space. And I do think that's important for a gaming phone like this, for a phone that you're going to want to play games on, that you're going to want to spend time getting into your game, and you're going to want the maximum battery life in order to enjoy that the most. It's all right, and certainly within a day, I mean, I can run any phone flat in a day, and I'm sure you're the same. But within a day, I've been able to get it to last through the day, even with a few gaming sessions. But multi-day, that's a bit harder, especially for a phone like this. Again, I feel like I'm belaboring the point, but again, that you are going to want to game on, because there's not much point buying this phone specifically if you're not going to game on it. So what about the cameras? Well, this is another area where the ROG Phone 7 Ultimate doesn't really live up to that ultimate billing, and it's basically because all the money's gone into the gaming side of this phone. You get a 50 megapixel primary, 13 megapixel ultra wide, and 5 megapixel macro at the back, 32 megapixel at the front. And look, they shoot well enough for a phone half the price, and that's the problem. At $2,000, you can get phones with telephoto lenses. You can get phones that don't do quite as much artificial post-processing as this one does. Now, do a ton of gamers really want high-end photography in their phones rather than gaming-centric features? I don't know. I mean, let me know in the comments below whether or not you think this is an important feature. Ultimately, while I wasn't upset by what this did with photos, I wasn't impressed at a $2,000 level either. And it's one of those trade-off things. If you want all the fancy gaming features, this has got them. If you want a really good camera at this price, no, this is not the phone for you. So should you buy the Asus ROG Phone 7 Ultimate? Well, it depends. This is a total niche phone. For a start, that asking price is just going to knock a lot of people out straight away. They're just going to look at it and go, nope, I'm not paying that much on a phone. I could never afford to pay that much for a phone. So you're going to get over that. Then you've got to work out if it's good value for the money. And I think it is within its niche. And I've got to be really, really clear here. Within its niche. Because if you want a phone that has good gaming performance, is really set up and engineered to make the most of games, yeah, this has got some potential in that space, as long as you don't want to plug it into an existing USB Android controller, that is. But if you want a more general high-power phone, if you want something that is particularly photocentric, it's not necessarily going to satisfy you. Anyway, that's my take on the Asus ROG Phone 7 Ultimate. Thanks for watching.